Their minds keep running back and forth through the exact same conversations on an endless loop. An office worker like Marcus endlessly rewinds what he just blurted out. An engineer like Sarah immerses herself in rehearsing the retorts she never dared to say, while a financial expert like Richard frantically analyzes what every single minuscule detail could possibly mean. The exhaustion that is draining them dry does not actually stem from living, but rather from the relentless overthinking about living. And this cruel imprisonment of the mind will officially come to an end today. Please, sit down quietly here with me, pour a warm cup of tea, and take a very deep breath to anchor yourself back to reality. We have long been indoctrinated with the belief that to escape anxiety, we must think more positively and strive to fix ourselves, yet the harsh truth is that those empty self-improvement advices are merely pouring more fuel into an already overloaded analytical machine. You cannot extinguish a fire by throwing in more wood, and you cannot soothe the churning mind by using that very same mind to think more about how to stop thinking. The only way out lies not in creating more friction, but in the surrendering of your weapons. Together, we will step into a walking journey through 8 stories, acting as 8 mirrors reflecting directly into the illusions you are locking yourself inside. We will untangle the knots of the mind, not by bracing ourselves to fight against it, but by gently seeing right through it. As you begin to recognize the meaningless plays that the mind relentlessly stages, its grip will automatically loosen, and the moment you cease analyzing is exactly when the primal peace that has always been present within you is truly awakened. Let us step into the very first story amidst the rushing pace of a late afternoon in the bustling city of Chicago. There, we meet Marcus, an office worker trapped inside a prison erected by his own mind. Staying awake every night, he constantly tortures himself with the unspoken rankings on the professional social network LinkedIn. He stares blankly at the glamorous job titles of others, endlessly questioning himself about what invisible qualities he lacks that they possess. The feeling of inferiority and inadequacy clings to him like an endless ghost, leading to the patching of his torn self-esteem with desperate efforts. The true exhaustion of Marcus comes not from his workload, but from the crushing weight of constantly putting himself on a scale to search for a phantom validation. Then, life pushes him toward a fateful reunion with his old friend Julian, now a Silicon Valley millionaire. Standing before Julian, he shrinks back, mentally preparing himself for looks of pity, but contrary to all expectations, his old friend welcomes him with genuine appreciation, unmixed with a single ounce of judgment. Together they share dinner, recounting rustic old memories that slowly melt away Marcus's shell of low self-esteem. In that peaceful space, enveloped by absolute acceptance without any judgment or demand to prove his competence, Marcus feels a bursting wave of relief that he had lost for so very long. Right on that very evening, Marcus falls asleep in the sheer exhaustion of comparison, shedding the invisible burden that had eroded his mind over all those years. While Marcus is sinking deep into an exhausted slumber, Julian quietly watches his old friend with profound empathy. Julian knows perfectly well that pride would never allow Marcus to accept any pity or direct financial gift. Therefore, he secretly executes a landmark action, deciding to hide the documents of a massive trust fund bearing Marcus's name deep inside the battered old notebook that his friend always carries with him. The following morning, Marcus leaves, tightly hugging the worn notebook, stepping back into the rushing pace of life and continuing the loop of self-torment. Many long years pass by, and he still diligently knocks on every opportunity's door, hoping someone will grant him a little bit of value. The heartbreakingly sarcastic truth is that Marcus has wandered through the darkest days, living in emotional poverty for many years, while in reality carrying a massive fortune right in his very own hands. We, too, are frequently exactly like that, always yearning to seek external validation and endlessly measuring whether we are good enough or successful enough. We turn ourselves into beggars pleading for respect, forgetting that we are already in possession of a priceless treasure. The solution to this exhaustion does not lie in trying to put on more frivolous titles, but in shaking off and halting the system of measuring our self-worth. You do not need to strive to prove anything anymore, because you have always carried the clearest, brightest pearl long before you began uttering words of self-doubt. Leaving behind the skyscrapers in Chicago, we move to the quiet yet heavily pressured atmosphere of a modern technology office in Seattle, where inner peace is tested by hostile external factors. Here, we meet Sarah, a talented female software engineer who is facing a different kind of draining exhaustion, one that does not come from self-doubt but from the harassment of others. That person is Chad, a toxic colleague who plays the role of a noisy monkey in the workplace, always lurking to steal credit and dropping bitter, sarcastic remarks aimed at her. If she were an ordinary person, Sarah might have thrown herself into the spiral of an eye for an eye, turning herself into an aggrieved victim, or spending hours imagining fiery confrontations to take down the malicious instigator. But Sarah chooses a different path. She drakes herself in the steady calmness of a great buffalo, letting the harasser jump and provoke on her back. Sarah's silence is absolutely not an expression of weakness or resignation. Rather, it originates from a deep realization that Chad's anger and envy truly belong only to himself. She perfectly understands that if she reacts to that provocation, it means she hands him the power to control her emotions, turning a petty creature into the ruler of her mind. Sarah's indifferent and entirely unwavering attitude unintentionally creates a deep void that swallows all the bully's smugness. Chad's psychological state begins to fracture as the poison arrows he shoots out keep falling into an endless void, making him increasingly infuriated and escalating the level of his insults. Her absolute silence toward him is far worse than the fiercest rages, because it completely strips away the manipulative power that he has always taken pride in. In the blindness of an ignorant soul, Chad mistakes Sarah's composure and tolerance for incompetent helplessness, thereby feeding his own illusion of power without even knowing that he is walking himself to the edge of collapse. Chad's blindness finally leads him to the brink of disaster when he decides to test his illusionary power on a new target. That is a senior manager recently transferred to the Seattle office, a man with a large, brooding presence, making Chad mistakenly believe this is just another gentle and easily bullied prey exactly like Sarah. Falling back into his old habits, Chad blatantly attempts to steal credit and drops insolent comments right in their very first team meeting. But he is terribly mistaken, for this manager absolutely does not possess Sarah's insight or quiet tolerance, but is, in reality, a volcano waiting to erupt. In less than the blink of an eye, the manager instantly strikes back with a furious rage, exposing all of Chad's despicable tactics before the entire company, and immediately throws him out the door with an undeniable termination. The moment Chad walks out of the building hugging his box of belongings, he is still submerged in utter shock, unable to comprehend why the exact same trick resulted in two completely opposite endings. The truth is that Chad has made a disastrous confusion between the endurance born of helplessness and the patience born of wisdom. Returning to our own story, you will recognize a profound philosophical lesson about something called the real estate of the mind. Try to reflect on how many times a terrible colleague dropped a demeaning remark during a mere 30-second meeting, but then you carried that anger all the way home. You set the dinner table alongside the ghost of that person. You stand under the shower for 3 full hours just to frantically rewind the conversation and strain yourself imagining countless perfect insults that you did not manage to blurt out. The instigator finished their part and calmly moved on, enjoying their own life, while you voluntarily became your own harasser, continuing to maintain a cruel war right inside your mind. So, who is truly the one holding the control here? The immediate first aid for you right now is to recognize the ultimate power of refusal. Never allow a mediocre person to rent space in your mind for a price of 0. When you refuse to react to meaningless provocations, you are not weak at all. On the contrary, you are completely stripping the remote control of your nervous system away from the hands of toxic people, affirming an absolute freedom that no insult can ever touch. Leaving behind the workplace battles, we step into a much quieter space that conceals an equally subtle kind of mental imprisonment, inside a cluttered art studio in Brooklyn. Here, we meet Leo, a 22-year-old art student who is being crushed by imposter syndrome and the paralysis of overanalyzing. Leo possesses a burning desire for painting, but his mind has morphed into a prison built from mountains of art theory books and sharp critiques. He drowns in the meticulous analysis of every movement, every technique of the great masters, only to reflect back upon himself and constantly see only an incompetent fool trying to play the artist. The more he reads and the deeper he understands, the noisier his mind becomes with questions about his own capabilities, and the inevitable consequence is that his paintbrushes grow increasingly dry, lying abandoned on the dusty easel. He is bound by the false belief that he must understand everything thoroughly, must secure a guaranteed victory, and must prove his outstanding talent before he is worthy of touching his brush to the canvas. That frantic analysis has entirely occupied his cognitive space, leaving no room for pure practice. Just as Leo is sinking deep into despair, planning to pack up his things and abandon the artistic path, he accidentally encounters an eccentric old professor at his school. Instead of advising him with lofty philosophies or stuffing him with a few more books on creative skills, the old professor sees right through the tangled mess in his head and assigns him a highly bizarre task. He forbids Leo from painting anything during this time. Instead, every single day, the young man is only allowed to do one single thing, which is to use clean water to scrub the stained canvases and carefully wash every single paintbrush in the studio. At first, this task seems like a ridiculous joke, but Leo has no other choice but to obey. He begins days of just standing quietly by the sink, scrubbing away layers of dried paint clinging tightly to the brushes, and washing clean the dust-covered canvases of the studio. The repetitive rhythm of the flowing water, the sound of the scrubbing brush, and his continuously moving hands create a space of unconsciousness where his noisy mind is forced to quiet down. No more thick art theory books, no more bitter self-judgments, no more cunning whispers of imposter syndrome. He is simply washing a canvas. And then, in a miraculously tranquil moment while staring at a once soiled canvas now slowly returning to its pristine, original white, a profound realization bursts open in Leo's mind. He realizes that if that layer of dirt and those chaotic streaks of paint can cling, they can most certainly be washed away. That filth is absolutely not permanent, nor does it belong to the core nature of the canvas. His mind is exactly like that very canvas. All those feelings of inferiority, the imposter, labels, the lack of confidence, and the extreme fear that have paralyzed him for so long are truly just layers of dirt from overthinking, accumulating through days of endless comparison and self-evaluation. They are absolutely not his true capability or his core essence. By performing an incredibly simple, repetitive action, he has found a perfect shortcut to cut through the tangled mess of theory and go straight to transformation. This is the essential first aid for you when relentless analysis begins to paralyze you completely. Do not try to read another book to seek perfect readiness, and do not wait until you understand every single corner of the problem before daring to begin. Instead, let simple, small, and repetitive actions guide your way. True freedom will appear when you bravely end the measurement of your own capabilities to start taking action, because that very process of pure practice will automatically forge the competence you always hallucinated you were lacking. Leaving the quiet studio in Brooklyn, where salvation comes from letting go of the need to understand everything, we slip into the bustling financial center of Manhattan, where the illusion of absolute control is imprisoning another mind. Here, on the highest floors of a tempered glass skyscraper, we meet Richard, a sharp-minded 55-year-old hedge fund manager. Richard's mind is a massive analytical machine, constantly calculating and predicting every risk, with a fierce belief that he can manipulate all variables of reality. Standing before a merger deal worth trillions of dollars, Richard believes he has established a flawless matrix. He confidently throws out a perfect, unprecedented financial bait, a sweet trap fine-tuned down to the last digit, aimed at distracting and manipulating the entire opposing side. In Richard's head, everything runs on an absolutely linear algorithm, where the bait will trigger greed, the opponent will take the hook, chaos will erupt within their ranks, and he will leisurely step in to clean up the aftermath with a success probability he confidently asserts to be firmly at 90%. But amidst that peak complacency, his young assistant bravely voices a warning that releasing such a massive volume of assets will trigger unpredictable chain reactions, because greed, once provoked, will attract the attention of forces lying far outside all projected charts. Regrettably, Richard arrogantly ignores the young assistant's warning, brushing aside that wise caution with the condescending attitude of a man who believes his algorithm is absolutely flawless. He does not realize that such blind certainty and the desire to control all things are the very veil obscuring his vision, leading him straight into the epicenter of an earthquake waiting to erupt just outside those glamorous glass windows. The moment the massive assets are released, everything seems to unfold exactly as Richard anticipated, as the opponents are immediately blinded by greed and fall into a spiral of chaos. Pride overflows in Richard's mind as he believes his algorithm is absolutely peerless. Yet, he has forgotten a core truth about the operation of all things that his young assistant tried to warn him about, which is the philosophy of dependent origination. When you pull a single thread, the entire web will vibrate in ways you can never foresee. That lucrative financial bait not only blinds the direct opponent, but the magnetic pull of greed also drags in countless unexpected variables. The massive disruption in cash flow awakens forces hiding in the shadows, causing the press to catch the scent of anomaly and expose every dark corner on the front pages, followed by legal investigators rushing in to freeze accounts, and finally the emergence of powerful third-party rivals seizing the opportunity to dive in and tear at the delicious prey. The network of causes and conditions spreads too quickly and becomes far too complex, vastly exceeding the calculating capacity of an individual mind. Richard might have programmed 10 perfect variables, but reality operates with thousands of variables intertwining and overlapping one another. His absolute confidence shatters to pieces before the unfathomable chaos, turning him from a brilliant manipulator into a victim crushed beneath the very gears he created. The costly lesson here is that you are only holding a very small piece of the picture, and the illusion of absolute control is the exact recipe for downfall. The first aid for you when falling into the trap of overcalculation is to acknowledge humility before reality. Planning is necessary, but you must learn to hold your predictions very loosely and accept adapting to what is truly unfolding, rather than insisting on forcing the world to operate according to the narrow algorithm of your mind. Leaving the ruined remnants of the control illusion in the suffocating financial center, we find our way back to a peaceful, quiet suburban setting in the state of Ohio, where another mental trap lies ready beneath an incredibly soft cover. Here, we meet Emily, a woman carrying within her a burning desire to write the novel manuscript of a lifetime. However, in stark contrast to Richard's frantic calculations, Emily's trap is a procrastination wrapped in silk and velvet. Her manuscript remains forever still in her mind because of countless incredibly reasonable and undeniable excuses for delay. Her mind constantly whispers words of careful advice, telling her to wait until the children grow a little older, to wait until there is a private and quiet office, or at least to wait until this messy house is fully cleaned before officially putting pen to paper. Every single excuse she offers carries a flawless logic, optimizing even the smallest variables in daily life. The soothing lullaby of the thought that she still has time and tomorrow will certainly be a better day to start has become a perfect anesthetic, stripping away the action of the present. She does not realize that waiting for the perfect alignment of external circumstances is truly just a mask concealing a deep-seated fear, a form of overanalyzing the timing. She lets every hour, every day slip by in endless preparation, imprisoned by her very own longing for a flawless beginning. Emily's waste does not come from a swift, disastrously wrong decision, but from the slow erosion of thousands of tiny accumulated compromises, keeping her forever submerged in the illusion of preparation. When we are so absorbed in arranging every puzzle piece of the future to be perfectly beautiful, we accidentally miss the cruel truth that the clock of reality has never stopped ticking, and those perfect tomorrows may very well never arrive. Emily's tragic waste only truly materializes when the children have grown up and left, leaving behind an empty house along with a quiet study, exactly like what she had always wished for. Yet, when she finally sits down before the blank page, the fiery desire of years past has long burned out, making way for a coldness and a health that is slowly waning over the years. Her eyes grow dim, and her mind no longer retains enough sharpness to weave the stories that once burned brightly in her chest. This is the most heartbreaking testament to the profound philosophical concept of impermanence and the rarity of obtaining a human life in Buddhism. Imagine your life as a ferry dock, where a boat has just pulled in, ready to carry you across the river of entanglement to the shores of freedom and liberation. That ferry represents the immensely rare opportunity of being born as a human being with enough cognitive capacity and time to pursue the meaning of life. Yet, you hesitate to step onto the boat because you are too busy arranging a complete breakfast, resting a little longer to ease your fatigue, or lingering to wait for the harsh midday sun to cool down. Each excuse for delay sounds incredibly reasonable and cautious, but when combined, they become a fatal disaster. Because the ferry never operates according to a schedule or waits for your readiness, it simply pulls up its anchor and leaves. The passengers who made it to the other shore are not those with the most perfect preparation, but those who bravely dared to step onto the deck, even if their bodies were weary, their stomachs were starving, and their luggage was still terribly messy. The body you possess right now, or the wisdom you hold at this very moment, all are temporary and can fracture or vanish at any given time. The crucial first aid for your mind right now is to immediately extinguish the mindset of waiting for perfect conditions. Do not wait for everything to sit neatly in order before beginning to live or starting to do the most important work. The ferry of liberation never patiently waits for you to finish packing your luggage. Begin immediately amidst the utmost messiness, exhaustion, and unreadiness, because taking a step right in the middle of the present chaos is the only way you won't have to stand forever on the deserted shore, regretfully gazing after an opportunity that will never return. Leaving the belated ferry dock in the quiet suburbs, let us head straight into the suffocating heart of schemes in the capital city of Washington, where another subtle mental trap lies in wait to swallow human beings, not the urgency of seizing an opportunity, but the urgency of choosing integrity over safety. Here, we encounter David, a senior financial director at a giant pharmaceutical corporation, who is fiercely torn when he accidentally uncovers a deadly truth hidden beneath polished financial reports, that the company's new drug carries dangerous side effects directly threatening users' lives. The very moment he has to face the fire of truth, his mind instantly activates a panic defense system and begins frantically calculating all the risks. He clearly sees the dark scenario. If he steps up to blow the whistle, he will lose everything from his high-paying job to facing countless brutal lawsuits, and his reputation and career will be utterly destroyed. His mind starts to negotiate continuously, wondering if this risk is truly necessary, and whether there might be another path, some sort of compromise, to simultaneously preserve ethical values while keeping his personal safety intact. This tearing conflict is, in reality, overthinking disguised incredibly skillfully under the cover of caution. David's calculations are not wrong at all, because the threats out there are absolutely real, but sometimes that very obsessive calculation becomes an enclosed cage, turning him from a cautious man into someone completely paralyzed. The continuous swaying on the fragile line between careful calculation and cowardice, wrapped in a shell of realism, drains David's energy, making him forget that being absorbed in analyzing how the fire will burn him has unintentionally caused him to lose his integrity and the true meaning of his very own existence. Amidst the suffocating boundary of compromise and fear, David finally makes a decision that shakes his entire career when he personally presses the button to send out all the classified documents, bringing that deadly truth into the light. The moment his finger leaves the keyboard, every worst-case scenario he had frantically calculated begins crashing down into reality as he is immediately fired, forced to face cold subpoenas, and the brutal turning of backs from the elite circle. Yet, a milestone miracle occurs right at the epicenter of the howling, tearing storm of fame. David finds an absolute peace and strange tranquility reigning right inside his soul. That feeling is exactly like the moment a brave soul leaps into a roaring fire, only to realize those blazing red flames suddenly become as cool and gentle as moonlight. That is the coolness of a conscience liberated from the prison of lies and self-serving calculations. The profound philosophy of integrity emerges clearly here, pointing out that true courage has never been the absence of fear, but rather the ability to take action even when fear is overwhelmingly present, because you realize there are sacred internal values worth thousands of times more than a safe but hollow survival. David knew in advance the fire would incinerate his assets and reputation, but he still chose to step in because his integrity was more important than a flickering existence in cowardice. The first aid for you right now is to deeply realize that living and continuously calculating risks to protect your safe shell will only create a much more cruel and persistent kind of burning, which is the fire of remorse and unending torment. There will be fires in life that you are obligated to jump into without any guarantee of safety, because only when you dare to wager your personal safety to protect core values will you truly touch your inviolable freedom and integrity. Leaving the brave fire of integrity, let us drift toward the sunny West Coast, arriving at the gridlocked Highway 405 in the city of Los Angeles, to witness another form of mental prison, which is the blindness to the very miracle of existence. Here, we meet James, a 60-year-old man sitting smoothly inside an expensive car with the air conditioning system blowing out cool streams of air. By all means, James should feel comfortable, but his mind is drowning in a quagmire of resentment and endless complaints. Someone just cut off his car, and James immediately lets the rage over the lack of respect burn him for 20 whole minutes. He is irritated with the slow navigation system, furious with the sweltering heat radiating from the asphalt, complaining about his business partners, and feeling his current life is terribly boring and riddled with petty inconveniences. His mind is busy calculating and magnifying the flaws of his external circumstances, completely blind to the obvious miracles present at that very moment. He does not realize that possessing a healthy body capable of steering a wheel, a sharp brain capable of navigating complex traffic rules, and the freedom to move through space at his own will are, inherently, an extraordinary privilege. James is sitting at the pinnacle of safety and comfort, yet turns himself into a miserable victim of reality simply because of 30 seconds of petty inconvenience. His exhaustion does not stem from facing some fierce disaster, but it bleeds from the very habit of treating existence as a burden, from continuously analyzing what is not going his way instead of recognizing the ultimate miracle of the fact that he is still breathing effortlessly and existing in this world. The screeching sound of braking cars violently tears through the thick atmosphere of Highway 405, reeking of burning rubber skidding long across the asphalt surface. Right in front of James's expensive car, a horrific chain collision has just occurred mere inches away, awakening him with a violently jarring jolt. In that moment bordering the line of life and death, time seems to freeze, and suddenly, all the petty complaints about the air conditioner's temperature or the slow navigation system evaporate completely, leaving not a single trace. James's heart pounds heavily in his chest, pumping hot blood coursing fiercely through every vein, reminding him of a naked truth that he had forgotten, which is that he is still alive. Let me tell you an ancient metaphor that has the power to instantly extinguish the arrogance of treating existence as a burden. Imagine a vast ocean covering the entire surface of the earth, without a single inch of land, and drifting aimlessly upon that water is a single wooden ring. Deep at the bottom of the profound sea, there is a blind turtle that rises to the surface exactly once every 100 years just to take a breath. What do you think the probability is for that blind turtle to surface and accidentally slip its head right into that drifting wooden ring? It is an infinitesimally small ratio, practically zero, an absolute miracle in terms of statistics. Yet, the probability of you being born in the physical form of a human being, possessing a mind capable of cognition, able to feel the beating rhythm of a heart, and being present at this very moment is even rarer and more miraculous than that great blind turtle. The wooden ring is right beneath your feet, and you are the turtle that surfaced at the exact right moment. The first aid for your mind right now is to permanently shift your perspective from irritated complaining to a deep reverence for the majestic scale of life. Troubles with partners or a traffic jam are not cruel punishments. In reality, the ability to face and solve those problems is itself an extraordinary privilege. You are standing on the miraculous wooden ring amidst the vast ocean, so please do not complain that it is not a luxurious yacht, but stand in awe before your own rhythmic breathing right at this moment. Leading the sunlit highway and the grand miracle of existence, where we learn to cherish every breath, let us step into the epicenter of another illusion prevailing in the modern era, inside a massive hall flooded with bright lights. Here, beneath the intense focus of a prestigious international conference, we meet Elena, an authoritative 50-year-old psychologist and a highly respected speaker. She is standing on the podium of glory, looking down at thousands of audience faces packing the rows of seats. They came here with their notebooks open, their eyes full of yearning, and a deep-seated belief that they themselves are defective, broken in some aspect, and desperately in need of fixing. Their minds are screaming out, demanding shortcuts to self-optimization, secrets to success, or 10 steps of iron discipline to force themselves into a perfect mold that society has predetermined. In Elena's hands at this moment is an incredibly flawless script, a speech polished down to every single word, containing familiar advice about constantly striving to rise up, defeating laziness, and forging the best version of oneself. But the exact moment her eyes meet the exhausted weariness hidden deep beneath those masks yearning for perfection, a razor-sharp realization slices through her mind. She realizes that handing them more empty self-improvement methods is, in reality, merely handing them more sophisticated tools to torture themselves. Telling them they must try to become better is simply a cruel way to implicitly affirm that their current nature is terrible and flawed. Self-help advice at this moment is not the antidote, but is exactly the sugar-coated poison feeding the endless machine of analysis and evaluation. In that very deciding moment, Elena chooses to abandon the role of a perfect savior. Slowly, yet containing an absolute determination, she lets the pages of the script fall freely to the stage floor, completely tearing away all the familiar norms of motivational speaking. The atmosphere in the massive hall suddenly solidifies. The murmuring whispers die down, giving way to an enveloping silence that is thick and taut as a bowstring, as thousands of people hold their breath in waiting, not knowing what is about to happen next, completely unaware that such a silent void is the perfect stepping stone to pave the way for a most primal truth about to be spoken. Amidst the silent void blanketing the giant hall, Elena gently raises her head high and raises her voice, not with the usual empty slogans, but with a firm affirmation echoing like the roar of an awakened lion. She looks straight into thousands of confused eyes and boldly declares that not a single person here needs to be fixed, because not a single person here is broken or defective. She strips away all concepts of having to strive to become good enough, and exposes the truth that all the anxiety, low self-esteem, or feelings of inadequacy they are carrying are truly just layers of earthly dust accidentally obscuring a priceless diamond that has always existed within them from the very moment they were born. Just like the fearless proclamation of the Queen in ancient philosophical tales, Elena asserts that wholesome nature and awakening are not a distant finish line that they must exhaustingly race to reach, but are the core essence currently being covered up by the very habit of overthinking and frantic analysis. The moment her words touch the consciousness of the audience, a silent bursting wave spreads throughout the space, severing every deepest doubt. When you realize that you have never been separated from wholeness and sufficiency, the aching question of whether I am good enough suddenly loses all its power and meaning. The exhausting race to prove your self-worth to the world instantly halts, making way for a primal peace where you do not have to try to become anyone else, but simply recognize anew the immensely pure, bright pearl that you have always possessed. The 8 stories we just walked through are precisely 8 mirrors reflecting the hidden corners that the mind often uses to imprison itself in the loop of overthinking. Together, we have seen the precious pearl always residing within Marcus's coat, seen the immeasurable value in Leo's simple actions, seen the proud leap rising above fear from David, or the awakening before the miracle of existence from James. Every single story is a reminder that what you are diligently searching for has, in reality, always been present right here, right now, only obscured by your very own exhausting act of searching. The inner war you have fought for so long is truly just an illusion, and when you realize your true nature has always been whole, that war will naturally dissipate, making room for your authentic presence. The most profound humanistic lesson we draw is the appreciation of unconditional self-worth and the courage to live instead of merely thinking about living. When you stop the harsh system of measurement and comparison, you will see life is no longer a burden, but a wonderful privilege to experience. I am very eager to hear the feelings from deep within your heart after completing this journey, and whether you see a reflection of yourself in the characters we just analyzed together. Please share your thoughts in the comments section below so we can connect and understand more about the experiences of real life. If this video has brought you a moment of enlightenment and peace, please hit the subscribe button, press like, and share to receive more captivating and profound content every single day. Your support is the endless source of inspiration for us to continue the journey of spreading these precious mental first aids. Finally, I sincerely wish all of you watching this video an abundance of health, a life overflowing with joy, and that every single day passes by in tranquility and mindfulness. Goodbye, and I look forward to seeing you again in the next videos.